There are stories that connect us to ourselves and to each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. Now, exclusively on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, your hosts, AJ and Natalie.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. Is anybody out there?
We'll see soon as they get into the rooms, the chat rooms.
Yeah, welcome. Hello, friends. It is Wandering Wednesday, Soul Wanderings Night on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Welcome to the show. We are hanging out on live.kgradb.com. We're also on KGRA Digital Broadcasting's Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube pages, as well as Soul Wanderings YouTube. So wherever you join us from, thank you and welcome. We are hanging out tonight, going to talk about the ego.
Whew. I'm so ready for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. There's obviously you know that I come from a spiritual point of view, and I have a lot of favorite topics, but this one has just never been my favorite topic. It just doesn't interest me.
It doesn't.
I'm not going to lie. It's kind of a boring topic for me. And I'm just it's important, right? It's important that we discuss this. I think it's important to have a relationship with your ego. It's just of all the topics that we have ever had, this probably isn't my favorite. So I am really excited because I know I'm going to learn something from you. You come from the human design side of things, and the ego is associated with the heart and willpower, and I can get on board with that. I definitely can get on board with that. So I'm excited to hear what you have to share so I can learn some more.
And even in a spiritual concept or consciousness, or even taking from the work of Carl Jung, who talked about the ego and the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk both of those parts to it to say that the ego is really like an aspect of us that as we befriend it, we really have this ability to understand ourselves on a deeper level. And the ego is the part that is inherently sort of a limiter, and it wants to hold us back and keep us in the status quo and in the comfort zone. And it's the part that gets scared of advancing and moving too quickly, or those different types of things when we're talking about spirituality and consciousness. And so it's this team that's at the ego and the higher self, and transcending the ego and really starting to understand the higher self, that it's this, you can't do one without the other. And so in a spiritual sense, that's vital to have that ego, and it's about a transcendence of it, and noticing that as we shift into, as we move towards our higher self, we couldn't have done that without the ego. It's the part that's the resistance, the contrast, the duality aspect. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
She's like, it's not my favorite.
It just doesn't interest me. It's not that, it's not my favorite. It goes beyond just not being my favorite. It just doesn't interest me. Now, I really like hearing about it, though. You and I both love Ram Dass, and he has a quote that says, "We don't want to kill or annihilate the ego," and it goes on and on. And I really like his point of view, because so many people in spirituality, I have observed that they want no ego. like get rid of
Yeah.
the ego, that ego is the enemy. And I just don't agree with that teaching.
Yeah.
I don't believe the ego is the enemy whatsoever. In fact, I believe that it's a, it's mandatory to be in cahoots with your ego.
I definitely could follow that understanding. And to even say, well, it's built into us. So of course it's mandatory. Like it's an aspect of us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come to this human form, which does contain that ego aspect to it, I don't see that this human experience is about becoming spirit.
Mm-hmm.
To spirit soon enough. When we shed the body, then we get all the way into spirit. That's a different space than living on this planet in this Maya, doing this body thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the body inherently has an ego, and it has aspects where you like it's a limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny when people get uber spiritual or uber new agey or
Kill the ego.
and they're inherently ego driven. My spirituality is better than your spirituality. I vibrate higher than you vibrate. Then you're less than me, and I know more than them. And my God is better than your God. And it's funny how that actually happens.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about humans. We're all a little messy, and we're all just doing the best we know how. At least I hope we are, right? But with the ego, like they or whoever has talked about it being the enemy, but the ego is actually a collection of like your thoughts and your experiences and the influence you've had, the conditioning you've had. It's simply the unobserved mind that controls our life. So it's like a man-made self, I would say.
Yeah. And some people will say, like along the lines of what you were saying, adding in the subconscious, the unconscious, like you were saying, the mind that limits us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have some sort of limit. Otherwise it wouldn't be fun.
Right. It's true. And, I was thinking, like, if we see our ego as our identity, we become like those thoughts and emotions. And our being is confined to like that physical body in the material world. So, like, once we're born, we develop an ego to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to navigate in this reality that we're living in. And this psychological grounding is needed before consciousness evolves. Like, I get the process. It's part of the evolution to create a healthy ego identity, to know that I am separate from the world, the material level of that world. And so I think it's important to know those things and to be aware of them. But the role of ego in spirituality, I just think is really often misunderstood. Like I said, it, like a lot of people just think the enemy needs to be killed. Yet it causes, like, I feel like an inner conflict, right? Because then it creates a space where we reject parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we label part of ourselves as the enemy, it's really counterproductive.
Correct. That's what I think is the trick. I think that's the inherent sort of trickiness about evolving spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone said to me today that how do we hold? She had just said, a question that she was asking herself was, what's the highest vibration I can hold? And so in my musing, before I responded, it was one of the higher frequencies. And we mentioned the map of consciousness earlier is a level of acceptance that says you accept it all, accept every aspect of yourself. And that including this ego part.
Mm-hmm.
and then you can hold a higher vibration. And a lot of times that ends up being like you were mentioning, this rejection of an aspect of yourself instead of the embracing of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that the ego is a necessary part of like who we are. We can even get rid of it if we wanted to.
Mm-mm.
But then there's also what is called the ego death.
Yes.
Do you know much about?
No. Tell me about this ego
You've
death.
heard of the ego death before.
Yeah, kind of, but
right?
I can't articulate it.
Let's see. The best way I could explain it is whenever like every part of you that you have come to know to this point dies. So you're no longer your body, you're no longer your thoughts, your emotions. It's just pure consciousness. And then in that experience, you completely change how you view the world or even like your life as a whole. And supposedly there's several stages of ego death. Like the first one is spiritual awakening. Like when you start to ask those questions, when you start to question like what your purpose is and why you're here. And then I'm sure a lot of people have heard of dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's another stage of the ego death, supposedly, where you just start feeling like all these like lower vibrational things, like scared and lonely and sad and lost, which takes you to a place of like figuring things out, like exploring, like don't know what you want, but you know what you don't want. So you begin to figure that all out. Anyway, there's a bunch of steps that take place in the ego death process from what I've read and probably have experienced to a certain degree, not understanding that it was
right
an ego death, because at the end of all of these stages, and there's like supposedly like 7 or 8, or I don't know. I'm sure everyone has, every guru has something to say about that. But like the Kundalini awakening,
mm-hmm.
or like the surrender and the soul growth. But at the end of it, like, is the awareness that when the ego no longer defines who you are whatsoever, you're no longer searching for your purpose or any sort of truth. You're just living in the experience in this present moment and experience all of this connection, the oneness that we talked about recently. And I think that's great and it's beautiful, but we need our egos. And so like in a perfect, like beautiful world where, I would consider it toxic spirituality. I would put that in that category. Then that becomes a thing. Like, why do you want to get rid of your ego? What would be the purpose of that? And also, it's great to maintain a healthy balance with your ego.
Oh, indeed. So there's times, so listening to you and going through this scripted awakening process, I've heard a few different takes on the awakening. And one that really resonated with me was that awakening can't be forced. You can't make an awakening happen. It happens or it doesn't happen. It's a thing that happens to you. And so when you follow a guru and then you push and push, you're like, I'm going to make these parts of my awakening, and I'm going to kill my ego, and I'm going to go through this ego death, and I'm going to do all these steps. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always lead to enlightenment. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't always lead to that. And then it's easy if you sit on the mountain and you don't have a relationship and you eliminate everyone that would disturb you from your life. And that's a relatively easy way to be in Zen mode. And you have nothing to trigger.
Whatever that
it's means. Easy to say, my ego died, and it's like, yes, but what would disturb you? Nothing, because nothing comes into my zone to disturb me.
Yes.
And then if there's something in my zone that's disturbing me, I will eject it because it must be wrong.
Get away.
Which would be, I guess, inherently ego egotistical to say that you know what's right and wrong.
Isn't that hilarious
Makes
how
me
that
laugh.
works?
And of course, this is just our perspective, but I've seen this type of a thing.
Mhm.
I'm such into the human experience, so I have a different take
Right.
on consciousness, saying this is the point.
Mhm.
The point to be in the body, and it takes all kinds.
Mhm.
Doing this human thing.
Right. Right. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about, so we don't want to be disconnected from our ego. Our ego is not the enemy in our opinions.
Right.
And gaining a healthy relationship with self. And I think that's really important. There are also things that can take you to the other side of that, where your ego is ruining your life. Like when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, or you're obsessed with your physical body, or you think that other people are separate from you. But on the flip side of that, how do we work with our ego, and what does that look like, especially when it comes to the human design? Because when I see human design, the ego is a very positive thing. It connects you to your willpower and to your heart. And I think that is so important. I love that the ego and the heart and willpower are like all mended together. Like, how beautiful is that, first of all? But tell us a little bit from your point of view with the human design aspect and what that looks like.
So you're correct. The ego is associated with the heart center, which has to do with willpower, and it has an ability, when it's defined. Now, only 1/3 of the global population. So that's 2/3 of the global population does not have a steady and consistent heart center definition. So the 1/3 that does have it, they have this reliable, consistent willpower that's there for them to utilize, which means in plain terms, those people with the defined heart center are here to prove themselves, because they have the will to do what they say they're going to do. So they get on the hook to being able to prove themselves. So one of the ways that I describe it when I'm teaching about it or working with my clients that have a defined heart, I say, guess what? You've got this big fat ego over here. It needs to be fed. You need to accomplish. So it's very vital, because you have this willpower and you have an ego that's defined. It needs regular and consistent accomplishments. And if you don't do it, it will eat you for lunch. It will be hungry, and it will get cranky, and it'll be unhealthy. So it's important for you to utilize that will and notice that you have it. And then I educate them that 2/3 of the global population does not have that. So when you have definition in your body graph, people that don't have definition don't make sense to you. It doesn't make sense. You're like, how come people will say they're going to do something and then they don't follow through? And that's definitely a true thing. So when you have a defined heart center and that thing, and you promise, and you have the will to do it, and you follow through, of course that matters to you. And then you put that out into the world and expect that from other people. And before I get into the undefined aspect of it, the people without that steady and consistent ego, I want to just stay on the defined ego and say people that have that have within their own sense of self an ability to measure their worth. And they will have the ability, when they're tuned in and understanding their defined heart center, they will negotiate for vacation time. If they're healthy in that aspect, they have this ability to demand and go after what they want, because they have a measure of what they really want. And they'll argue for their benefit, and they'll say, I deserve to have this or that or the other thing. And they have this ability within their framework to measure it. So that's the part where I talk about the people that do have an ego sense. Then there are some people that the heart center becomes their inner authority. Now imagine this. Someone whose inner authority is centered directly in that heart center, which is their ego, where it is for them to do what they want, to figure out what's in it for them, because that's their inner authority. That's not a lot of people, thank goodness. But for those people that have that, that's their driving force, and it can make them a little bit difficult because there's a lot of the population that doesn't have that. And so when you don't have that, you take someone that's driven by that and they can be a bit much. So there's those aspects that come from the human design. Now, when you have an undefined heart, you don't have an ability within your own framework. You do not have this ability to measure your own worth. So those people will often struggle with self-worth because it doesn't matter how many accomplishments they have, it doesn't have a place to hold. There's not a defined bucket, let's say, that says, oh, this accomplishment and this accomplishment and this accomplishment. So people with an undefined heart will often be overachievers, and they'll still feel like they just can't do enough.
Are they also the ones that should not keep promises?
Correct. They shouldn't make promises.
Okay. Yeah. Keep, make, same.
Yeah.
You know.
So, well, there's just a little bit of difference to say they will have because of the inconsistent willpower, they may be standing right next to someone that has a defined heart. And through that definition, they'll have this pressure and they'll promise something. And they'll mean it in that moment when they're with the person that's got the willpower. And then when they go away, like take, for instance, you go to a retreat or to one of those seminars that's being led by someone standing on the stage that most likely has a defined heart, and they're like, you can do it. Make a promise to me. You're going to be able to do it. And I know you can do it. And rah, 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 rah. All that energy. Yeah. And then you go home and you don't have a defined heart center and you're just like, ah.
Right. You're in it and you're like, yes. And you feel so motivated and you're like, I've got this. I can do the thing. And then you go home and you're like, that was a nice high.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a nap.
Mm-hmm. Or those goals really that you set
anymore.
Yeah. So then the goals, and then there's just not that same drive that this person is up on the stages. And then it becomes a cycle of unhealthy inner workings because the not self, the mind is the spokesperson for the not self part, and your not self voice from the undefined heart says, I'm not worthy, but if I would do this thing, then I would be worth it and I would feel better about myself. Or if I would just promise this thing, or if I make this goal, then I will be good. And that drive isn't there. So it becomes this unhealthy cycle. Now, what does it really helps people that have an undefined heart to understand? Don't make promises and pay attention. This has been a big thing for me. Wow, the shift that has happened after about a year and a half, when I really started to discover the parts in me that were the undefined heart area. So I have an undefined heart. I don't have any gates activated in my heart center at all. So it doesn't even come up and defined in me that often because it takes a lot of activations it's being next to a person with a defined heart, or somewhere in the transit, I'll have it activated in me. So as I start to become more familiar with my own, I'm feeling that pressure. Prove myself. And I look backwards in my life and like, wow, all these times I was undervaluing myself. And just not consciously, just because I have this undefined heart. And the more I get familiar with what that's like, what that looks like, and one day I realized I don't have any roads through willpower. Zero. I don't have any connecting. No gates, no connection channel, no roads that even go close to my heart center. So I'm like, whoa. Well, how will I accomplish things? Well, through my definition, which is not in my heart. And that
There's
helps
so
me.
much to human design. It's like all over the place, everywhere.
Right. And understanding the body graph and various things like that. But what's beneficial to understand is if you're listening to this and you have inherently struggled throughout your life with a positive self-worth, it's highly possible you do not have a defined heart. So it is your nature to struggle with self-worth because you don't have an ability to measure it within yourself. And it doesn't matter how many compliments you get from other people, how people want to give you worth and share with you that you're worthwhile. You just find this spot inside of you that doesn't believe it. Mm-hmm. So you can come at it in a different way. It can really, really be a sense of freedom. When I work with people with an undefined heart and I tell them, look, you don't have anything to prove. So a couple of things you need to remember. Don't make promises, which means goals, being on time, trying to get things done on a deadline. All of those things fit in this category of promises. And a commitment to do something at a particular time is inherently not a natural thing for people with an undefined heart. And that ego, they don't have an ego to be fed. And so that's a big difference. So it's not about accomplishments for them. Their sense of worth that will come from somewhere else in their body graph. It's a big thing to understand that. It can really unwind a lot of difficult things in someone's life.
Right. Where they're fighting against themselves or learning to work with themselves. It's good to know.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to the heart.
Yes.
And I love that you give me constant reminders.
Well, I find it's really important to hold and lift up the people in their definition. It's like your willpower, your will to get stuff done, and the people that are around me that have hearts, the defined heart center with that ego and that willpower, it's been so beneficial for me to know. Because there's been times in my life with people that I've worked and interacted with where I was like, whoa, it was helpful for me to know that, oh, wow, that's that ego from the other person, or the will that is pushing against me and I have nothing to fight that willpower. And I just understand that it's like, it's not my will, but I would love to watch someone with willpower work. It's amazing. And then I think about the difference and I think, well, I don't have to make all those steady and consistent accomplishments. So I'm off the hook that way. And it's really nice for me.
Whatever.
I got nothing to prove.
I've got nothing to prove. Nothing. It is a much different world for me.
Yes. So I want to just bring up in layman's terms and outside of the human design where people will say, wow, and that person's got such a big ego. And how they feel like it can be sometimes a toxic trait in people.
Most definitely.
To be egoic. And there can be healthy and unhealthy egos. And how it can be off-putting with people with a big ego. And so I really do like the framework of the human design because it makes it really specific whether or not the person with the overinflated ego is very, very not self because they're acting in ways to try to prove themselves, to build themselves up, to what's the word I'm looking for? But to As you're on a radio show and then
You're pulling it, AJ.
Yeah, I don't know. To compensate. That's it. To compensate for something inside of themselves that may be lacking, or the person that has a defined heart and just is like, holy cow, your way, and everybody has to follow your way because it's my will, and we got to do it my way.
See, and my heart is defined, but I don't feel like I am living in my definition a lot of times because I get so uncomfortable in that space. I do. It makes me really uncomfortable. I'm like, is that okay? Can we go my way? But is that all right? I don't know. It just feels really awkward.
Well, and I think that we definitely can be conditioned against that, where you don't get the freedom to just to utilize that energy in a way until you play with it.
Yeah. I was being sarcastic in a lot of ways, but there was a point where it was really like that. Now I'm depends on the day, I guess.
You'd be like, so I want it my way. Okay.
I do want things my way, though. That is one thing that, like, in a group setting, not so much. I'm pretty easygoing. But, like, at home, I like things a certain way. I like my life to flow a certain way. I like my schedule a certain way. And it's not everyone's favorite thing to be around me when I'm in that space because I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Do it my way. My way is the right way. I have tried this. I know.
Yes, but to know yourself is a great thing, because then you can honor it and you can understand, well, this is my wants and my desires and my way. And
I like what I like.
Everybody else has their own way.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? They can have their own way. I can't be around it if I don't like it. That ego. Seriously.
That ego. It's often so misunderstood.
Definitely. And I say it's not my favorite topic. And maybe I just have some adverse reaction to it.
Maybe. A lot of people do.
Maybe I need to check into that a little bit. Maybe I need to check my ego, see where we're at on that. But
well, in regards with that, I think for you, because you do have a defined heart center with a steady and consistent ego aspect to yourself, then understanding what does that mean to have that be healthy? What does that healthy defined heart look like and feel like for you? And where does it sit in the hierarchy of your inner authorities, that type of a thing? That's what I would say for people, if they're living their design and they have a defined heart, is to understand how to make sure that aspect of themselves is healthy, because what's defined in us is what we put out into the world. So 2/3 of people around you are getting blasted by that energy when it's like coming off of you, just in general. And I know that you work on that, but or anyone else out there, if they're familiar with their chart. But even if they're not familiar with their chart, to check on the part that would be, so the ego can be the aspect of us that tends to be more shallow, more sensitive, more easy to offend. Those are aspects that I would say outside of human design. I would describe the egoic energy is the part that is overly sensitive and not allowing other people to coexist and have their own perspective and point of view. It's that along the lines of narcissistic. So narcissists.
I was going to ask you about that. Where does the narcissist characteristics fall in line with the ego?
Well, I think it's definitely lined up with it. It plays a big part in this whole energy, even in psychology, to say that the narcissistic traits to say it is about me.
Mm-hmm.
And narcissists often are very, very sensitive and don't have a lot of resilience and don't have a lot of ability to include other people within any sort of framework, and to have and say that someone else's perspective and point of view even matters.
So
Because
would you consider, oh, go ahead. I thought
no,
you were
you
done.
finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
Would you consider the narcissist personality an ego personality? Would you think that they're like a characteristic of the ego, or is it its own category?
I would.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just because I feel like narcissists are really so much in their ego, but are they two different things?
So I would, well, it depends on exactly what framework we're talking about narcissistic things in. You know, there is in modern psychology an actual clinical diagnosis that said, look, there's these criteria, and if someone meets these different criteria. I was working with a client many years ago, and I happened to work and share an office with a social worker. So I just grabbed the DSM-4 or 5 that it was during that time and opened it up to it and read. There was 19 or 13 different things. And to this woman whose husband had died by suicide, we were just unpacking a lot of the stuff. And I read these criteria, and she said, yeah, every one of those things matched what her husband was like. Now, one of the characteristics that I remember that stands out was that a person that has strong narcissistic characteristics or tendencies will tend to blow up special occasions, and they will make everything about them. And if it doesn't fit a particular way, then down goes the special occasion. And it's very dysfunctional and disruptive to life, and very hard relationship to be in. And it's difficult to break through to that person because they're inherently hard of hearing. I'm going to say that. Hard of hearing. They find it hard to hear someone else's perspective.
I love that. Man, the list. I want to be like, are you listening? Are you listening?
So when we're talking about that, it's like, I don't know exactly how to break it out, because when we're using different language like this, and there's a lot of different models and tools that go in to describe these things in a really in-depth way. Mm-hmm. And we're just, have an hour and we're talking about this stuff at the level that we're talking about it, which is fun, but it's not fun when you're in a relationship with someone that is so self-centered that do you feel like you are just this tiny aspect in their world?
Yeah.
And it makes it very difficult to be around because they're extremely controlling. They dictate the life, and difficult to please.
Yeah.
And
I'm familiar with those relationships, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, I laugh. I do laugh at really inappropriate times. I'm still laughing. I laugh at funerals. I just don't take a lot of things very seriously, and I forget that other people do. So with that being said, I'm just more sensitive to, thanks for bringing that to my awareness. It really is more serious than I'm laughing about.
Well,
do you see what I'm saying? Like, I think also it's like a nervous laughter because I have the trauma around narcissists. So I'm just like, we're talking about this. And I laugh when I'm nervous. So there you go. Me being authentic for a minute.
During the time that someone is all solidly in their ego, and that is ruling the current area of the world that you happen to be inhabiting, it is extremely difficult. There is a lot of tension. And since people are definitely can't listen. There doesn't seem to be an easy solution to those types of situations. Really not. If someone's fully caught up in their ego, either way, there's
Remove
times
yourself. Remove yourself.
where.
So the best thing you can do.
Yes. So this social worker I used to share office with, very wise man, love that man. And I asked him one time, so about a person that's narcissistic, how would you deal with that? And he said, well, essentially they don't really care about your feelings because we had last year we had that woman on the show that wrote the Narctionary book, and she was talking about this spectrum. So that reminds me of that. But he said, look, they can't care about your feelings,
right?
But you've got to care.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to care about your feelings. And there is no reason why you don't have the right to vocalize your feelings. Just understand that they aren't going to care. So he says you walk into the room and you tell them exactly how you feel, and then you leave. And they do whatever they're going to do, but you have vocalized it, and don't expect them to care about your feelings, but you get the opportunity to speak.
That's interesting. But then, okay.
Yes.
You walk away, but a narcissist will follow you because
Sure.
they want to have the last word, right?
Yes.
They want to be heard, and they want their point to be the right point. So
Right.
what you said, what's the point in communicating with somebody who has that much ego, that much narcissism in their personality? Like they lack empathy and compassion. They don't
Correct.
have those feelings in order to support you and where you're coming from.
Well, I think underlying all the things, and my takeaway from what he said was, do not let them restrict your ability to communicate just because they don't care. Like, it's important and vital for a person that's in a relationship like that. Could be a parent. I know someone who says his mother is just narcissistic, and he had to come to terms with that. And so underlying that difficulty in a relationship is to come to an awareness that you have the right to communicate, because it can be strangled from you in those types of relationships. They literally can cut off your voice because they say you don't have one. It doesn't matter what you say. And over time, that stuff wears a person down. Mm-hmm. But to heal from that, you've got to take your power back.
Yeah.
And you know how often we give our power away to a dictator.
Right. And, I can speak from experience. You don't understand the amount of power you actually have when you are in a friendship or relationship with somebody like that, or, they're your parent, because you've been made to believe that you don't possess any of that. And so it's not a matter of just making a choice. Like, I get that you're saying you just need to go. Like, that's not, like, it's the same thing when people say, why did you stay in that abusive relationship? Mm-hmm. Well, there's this whole bundle of other experiences that are going on. It's not a matter of like finding your power or being brave enough. It's a process, and you have to like have a remembering, if you will, of what you're worth. And so, like, just go away or go in the other room isn't always the easiest thing, but I think it's important to have those reminders out there for people who are experiencing someone with that large of an ego, to know that, like, there's resources and there's family or friends or whatever that groups, church, whatever that looks like, because it is a remembering. You have to remember, like, your worth more than you're being led to believe.
Right. So just as a reminder, that did come from a social worker that was a long 25-year career therapist. And that's where often we will discover ourselves, where we have an opportunity to be able to talk longer than a minute or whatever, and to remember that it often requires something outside of that. You
Yeah.
want to put a reminder out there that this big ego person is actually a minority.
Hmm.
Most people really don't function like that, but there are people that do.
Yeah, that's true. But we can't control what other people do,
Nope.
right? And
Nope.
so we have our own individual person to work on. And I think it's really important that you check in with yourself often. Like, where are you at in relationship with your ego? Is your ego working against you or with you? As I think that is important that we find this healthy balance between self and ego, or however you choose to look at that, and come to a healthy place.
Oh, definitely. And then given that we're, in the beginning of September or December, and it's the holidays. And of course, that comes us so often with family get-togethers
Yeah.
or, these types. And inherently, there's going to be someone in the family that
Mhm.
represents that person with the larger ego or control. Then we start to understand that they're different than maybe you are. It doesn't make them right. So just a reminder to also understand that dictators never get to rest. It's I don't remember where I heard this teaching, but it said, the dictator, that is the person that controls everything, can be very difficult to be around, and they never get to rest. They're just driven, and they've always got to have control of everything. That can be very difficult.
Very exhausting.
Very exhausting. And I want to just go back and say they can't hear often.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the best strategy is to go along just to get along, because that just makes things go easier. And there really isn't always an easy explanation to those types of things. But if you take things with a grain of salt from people like that, the sting on you can be less than if you start to take it very personal and you want to make them see you and those different types of things. So there's times where the wise person just says less.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that completely. So instead, I think, I know we still have like 10 minutes or something. I don't know. But I just think it's important for us to, remember that when we work with our ego, we befriend ourselves, because our ego is part of us. And so instead of like trying to get rid of your ego as if it's separate from you, you're going to be missing pieces and aspects of yourself by doing that.
Yeah.
And so befriend yourself, meet all aspects of who you are, including and understanding like all of it, so you can work in harmony with all of these aspects of yourself, and for your own being, and also for all the people you interact with. Do them a favor too. Check yourself.
Yes, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
You did it. I thought it. I didn't say it.
Well, of course, I say that. I have the Undefined Heart Center over here, so I'm just like acquainted. I feel a whole lot of ego energy from the world around me. I've been in a relationship with someone that had the Defined Heart Center, that it actually was their inner authority. And I wish I had known back then, go back in my life to my younger self, and could have just educated her on her undefined ego. Say, hey, you don't have to prove anything. You feel all that pressure? Let's redefine that for you.
Yeah.
And then let's learn how to support the person that I'm with that has the defined ego, that has to accomplish things, that needs this type of thing to help them like get the language going on in their head to be a little healthier in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that inner voice can be rough.
Whew. It has been the one thing in my whole life that I have battled with. You know?
Yeah, and sometimes you have to just check that. You have to pet the ego. Oh, that's one other thing that it also does help to know who needs compliments, who needs accolades, who needs to be patted on their back for their accomplishments, and really have them noticed, because that matters for a person. If they're working with the human design and you happen to know they have a defined heart center, it really matters for them. That feeds the ego, and it's important. So it can do a lot to know a person that does need to have the ego stroked. And it's actually very strategic to know how that can benefit, and it can ease a lot of things.
So moral of the topic tonight is be friends with your ego. Hi, friend. Hi, friend. And be kinder to yourself, because it's the ego. That's the one that's beating you up. That's the one that is like in your head telling you what you're not instead of what you are. You just got to change that relationship and you'll blossom. Literally.
Yeah, for sure.
I really am grateful for this conversation today on my not so favorite topic. It's interesting. I like hearing other points of view, and you always have something Natalie Nugget wise to give, to offer.
I definitely get the opportunity to talk about this one a lot.
Yeah.
With different people.
Yeah. It's good. I hear it on repeat actually with you, with clients in passing. And I'm like, oh, talking about that again. Oh, okay. Good. Nice.
Most often it's like, there's your undefined heart trying to prove yourself. There you are trying to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Feeling like you need to validate people or do something. We had a conversation earlier today that said, yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. It's okay for you to say no. And actually a couple of conversations today with people with undefined hearts where I'm like, you don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain it.
You have nothing to prove.
Nothing to prove.
So good. Thank you for all of the goodness.
Oh, you're very welcome. So we have a minute or two, do we?
We have a minute.
Oh, a minute. Oh, well, just hold on tight for these holidays. I guess it's the best thing to say.
Yeah. Well, we still have shows. We still have 2 more weeks of shows. We won't be doing a show on Christmas Day or on New Year's Day because they're like replays and things like that. But we have a couple more weeks before all of that madness. I'm trying to think of something nice to say. I'm not a fan of the holidays. Either way, let's not go there. Everyone that has joined us tonight, thank you so much. We really love seeing your names pop up in the chat and your comments and your saying hellos and the activity. The support is really good for our egos.
Yes.
It keeps us doing the things that we love to do. So thank you very much. And until next week, have a great one, and we'll see you all then. Good night.
Good night.